Trent Condon, LeShun Daniels with you on today's Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Our last look at the matchup against Tennessee in the bowl game. We'll talk about what it's like to prepare for a quarterback that is starting for the first time and the offensive coordinator going into his final game. Brian Ferentz speaks for the last time to the media today. Locked On Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon. He's LeShun Daniels, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. While you're there, hit the subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. LeShun, good to see you. Christmas in the rearview mirror. We got New Year's. Big plans for you and the fam?
No, not really. No, nothing crazy. Just hang out with some friends. Regular stuff. Enjoy the new year. Just hanging out probably at my house, to be honest. But no, it'll be a good time. It's always a good time hanging out with family and friends. So it'll be enjoyable for sure. What about you?
So when you, not a whole lot. Yeah, we'll go over to, we got a group of friends we get together with. A bunch of them have kids around the same age. So the kids run around, do their thing, have a couple of cocktails, celebrate, like 10 o'clock as opposed to midnight, and get the kids back home and get them to bed and get ready for what should be a fun January 1st on football. Of course, what we have with the Iowa game early on and then leading into the college football playoff. We'll make our picks for those games coming up here, presented by FanDuel a little bit later on. But, well, when you're in college, you didn't get to celebrate New Year's Eve very often, right? I mean, you guys were preparing for games, so New Year's a little bit different when you're getting ready for a game the next day.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's no party and there's no any of that. You just gotta go to bed at your regular time. Obviously you got to treat it like it is like a regular game and have your same routine. And part of that routine is getting to bed early. Yeah. So there's no New Year's celebration until at least after the game. So that's usually how it worked with bowl games, since we were always on, New Year's.
Yeah, no popping any bubbly, anything like that come midnight. Nothing like that as you guys are getting ready for the bowl game. Well, LeShun, speaking of that, I saw coming up on Saturday tomorrow that they will, the team will be making their way over to Universal Studios. There's always a lot of fun things that are involved. We talked about some of your guys' celebrations after the games, but what about that? When you look back at your bowl time, what was the most fun thing that you guys got to do? The Rose Bowl, I know there was a lot going on there and felt like that, being the granddaddy of them all, there was a whole lot of pomp and circumstance for it. Is there one thing that sticks to your mind, kind of the most fun thing you guys got to do before the bowl game?
Nothing like specifically. I mean, all the bowl games, like there was like lots of like good events to do. So like for the Outback Bowl, we did Busch Gardens, and that was a good time. And like they actually had us like go around and like feed animals and giraffes and whatnot. So that was pretty cool. And then like for the Rose Bowl, there was actually a number of different events for the Rose Bowl. We went to Disneyland. Went to like a comedy show or whatever, which was kind of cool and fun. And then we had the dinner at the Lowry's place with the prime rib, and just all overall, like just the events in general, I think are a good time, just because you get to hang out with your teammates and enjoy each other's company in like a kind of low key, like more like a fun type relaxed environment. So for the most part, yeah, I mean, I enjoyed everything, because you want to not take any of that stuff for granted. So the fact that you got to go to amusement parks and Disneyland and whatnot, and not have to deal with the craziness of buying your own stuff and dealing with all that, like getting all that stuff like paid for, was a good time. So no, nothing in particular, but really just going to these events, hanging out with the guys in a relaxed environment, I think was just overall just a fun time.
So back in the day, it used to be a huge thing also what each of the players was getting, right? What the bowl swag was going to be and what you were going to get. And that changed and evolved. anymore, it used to be like a huge article, and talking to people on the print side of things, they'd say, it'd be their most clicked on article of the year. Sports Business Journal always put one out. We used to have John Orand on the program a lot, and he'd say, oh yeah, it wasn't even close. That changed and kind of evolved as he went into the gift suite, so you didn't get to find exactly what it was. Was that happening while you were a player? Did you guys have something where everybody got something, or was it all gift suites by the time you were playing?
I want to say only did gift suites maybe the Rose Bowl and the Tax Slayer Bowl, I want to say.
So it was kind of evolving as you were playing.
Yeah, so it was evolving as I was playing. So you never knew like specifically like what you were gonna get, but like for the Outback Bowl, it was like pretty like specific gifts for that. And it really didn't change from the first time we went in 2013 to the last time we went in 2016. So those didn't change, but yeah, like it was starting to happen as we were there. And personally, I like the gift suites because so you got to pick whatever, and you got to get stuff, maybe for your house or whatever that you feel like, oh yeah, I could use this. This would be pretty helpful. Or you get a new TV or a chair or whatever. Like all that stuff was cool. So yeah, I definitely like the gift suites. I was a fan of it. But yeah, that type of thing was evolving as I was at my time at Iowa.
So we look at this matchup against Tennessee, and the Vols come into this one a disappointing year, I think, where their expectations were. They were 8-4, had opportunities, had a big lead in the first half against Alabama, a few other games. It's not the same offense that we saw a year ago. They improved defensively, but they got a ton of opt-outs. The biggest one, though, is the quarterback, Joe Milton, who will not be there. So it will be the true freshman, many people believe the best quarterback in the country over Arch Manning a year ago, Nico Iamaleava. So Iamaleava, 6'6". I saw the comp to Justin Herbert, that tall, lanky, really good with the football. He can run around. He can move a little bit, but he's also a freshman going up against this Iowa defense. So first of all, preparing for a quarterback that you haven't seen before, when you put in those kind of preparations, don't have a ton of film on, how difficult does that make that for Phil Parker and company? If they're going to make any changes, anything schematically they're going to do, how difficult is that for the defensive staff?
Yeah, I think it definitely presents a challenge because you don't know, you don't really have an idea of like the things that quarterback's great at and things that they're not so good at. Like, yeah, you can go off of maybe some of their garbage time reps, or you can go off of maybe some of their high school tape, but you never know how someone's gonna play when you actually get them in a game and there's actual stakes involved. So it definitely presents a challenge for the defensive staff. So obviously, knowing it's a young quarterback, you're going to try to do things that are going to rattle them, whether it's, can add some different looks for the fronts, add some different looks for the coverages, add some different rotations, different blitzes and things of that. So the quarterback has to look at additional things and prevent them from playing as fast, because I'm sure that their game plan is going to be something that's like, hey, we know that we love, that the quarterback loves these specific plays. We knows that he wants to get to these type of things. So we're going to try to rely on that heavy. And because of that, it's not going to be a lot of variation for them offensively. So knowing that, as Coach Parker and the defensive staff, you're going to try to do whatever you can to make those pictures not clear and make it so that quarterback has to actually think and play slower, so he can't go out there and play fast and play up to his potential talent level that everyone thinks that he has. So it definitely presents a challenge for the staff, but knowing how good Iowa does in preparing in general for every single football game, especially on the defensive side of the football, it's not something that I'm too worried about. Yeah, there might be an adjustment period maybe for the first few drives, but once they get an idea of like, okay, these are the things that they're really trying to do, these are the areas that they're trying to attack, Coach Parker and the defense usually adjust pretty well.
Pretty good having that defense behind you every single time. We'll talk a little bit more about the offense, what we anticipate to see. Brian Ferentz, he was not scheduled to appear in the press conference today with the coordinators. It was supposed to be LeVar Woods out there. Instead, he did go up and speak for the first time all season long. We hear from the offensive coordinator. Thoughts on him? LeShun's thoughts on Brian Ferentz, who was the offensive line coach when LeShun was playing. We'll do that as we continue. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your number one ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Trent Lesean back with you one more time here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. We got picks coming up here in just a moment. We'll get our picks presented by FanDuel out there with the college football playoff games, a couple others, and of course, Iowa, Tennessee in the Citrus Bowl. Today, we heard from Brian Ferentz with the assembled media down in Orlando, not scheduled to appear, yet there he was out there talking. Now, there wasn't a ton that came out of it. It's not like we didn't see anything any given Sunday, where there's this big speech or anything. It was kind of as you'd anticipate, a little low key, but a couple of things that came out of it. First, I thought it was really good the way that he put it, and people were trying to put the narrative out there. Win one for the Gipper, right? Win one in Brian's final game, and the players. We understand. A coach like that, we saw after the Illinois game, the celebration, the hugs on the sidelines, those kind of things. So we know that these guys obviously respect Brian, but he said that this program is not about one person. I thought it was a really good way to put that. And though he's obviously disappointed, would like this to play out in a different fashion. You played for him. He was the offensive line coach. You were obviously well in keen with what he was doing and working with that offensive line, game planning, those kind of things. So just initially your thoughts. I know we've talked about Brian in the past and the kind of coach that he was. He was never your OC, but just what that was, what it was like to have him as a coach.
Yeah. I personally enjoyed having him as a coach. It helps that he was the person who originally came to recruit me in general. He was the one who came all the way out to Warren, Ohio to check me out and start that process. So he's always had a fan and myself and my family, and then obviously you have an opportunity to play for him essentially. Again, yeah, he was never my direct coach, right? I had a different running back coach, and he ended up coaching running backs after I left. But we were very involved on a day-to-day basis with the fact that he coached offensive line. A lot of times, offensive line and running backs are in meetings together to go over whether it's pass protections or maybe new run concepts that we're trying to implement for any given week. So personally, I thought he did a great job when it came to coaching up the offensive line and helping out with the running backs in that process. It definitely felt like I learned a lot of football behind him, especially just knowing in general, like how the offensive line works with the running backs and how that overall works with the offense as a whole, from run concepts, why you want to do these things, and pass protection concepts, and why we're coaching things a certain way, or we're game planning things a certain way. So, personally, really enjoyed having him as a coach. Obviously, it sucks that it didn't work out as OC at Iowa. I'm sure everybody wanted it to work out, but it just didn't. But overall, he always has a fan and myself and my family. So,
with it not working out, injuries are obviously a part of it. The offensive line development, they had a lot of guys that left the program either because of injury, guys that just didn't pan out. That was a developmental problem that they ran into the last couple of years with the offensive line. Schematically, we saw some great things. You go back to the Holiday Bowl against USC, beautiful game plan, getting Amir Smith-Marset, a lot of jet sweeps with him, getting the ball in space. It was a really good game plan. Of course, the Ohio State game, everybody will remember that one. But then there was also the low points. Obviously, the last couple of years, this thing is absolutely cratered. But even after that Ohio State game, they go out the next week after winning, putting 50 plus up a 50 burger up on the Buckeyes, and they have 60 yards of offense against Wisconsin. So there was kind of a both sides to it. One thing I want to get your perspective on, if you remember early in his tenure as OC, he was up in the booth where I believe most offensive coordinators should be. And then he got in a little trouble. He was beaten on the door of the replay official. And then he went down to the field. It's got to be difficult being able to see things at field level. They said, well, he just enjoys that more. As an offensive coordinator, I personally think you need to be up in the booth. There's just so much that you can see up there to make things, because after the scripted plays, this was something that was throughout his tenure. When he was down on the field after those scripted plays, it just didn't work nearly as well. You agree with that? And something, maybe it could have been different if he didn't have that tirade up there in the booth.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because a lot of times it really does kind of depend on the coach and where they're most comfortable at. But I mean, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, I think as an offensive coordinator, to be able to see things and see it from up top and be able to see the entire field, I feel like it allows you to adjust a little bit better as the game moves along. Whereas, on the field, it is nice because you can definitely get a feel for the players. You can get an idea of like, okay, this is their body language. This is how the momentum is feeling. You don't really get that as much in the booth. And knowing Brian as well as I know him, I mean, I just know being in the booth probably just killed him. And he wanted to be on the field and be around the guys, be around the rest of the coaches and the team, just to have that field environment and kind of keep him not only level, but also in a position where he can really help influence the offense down there. But yeah, I mean, it's two sides to it. It honestly depends on. It really kind of depends on the coach. I see the thing a lot of times nowadays. A lot of the younger coaches have found a tendency to want to be on the field and be in that environment and really interact with the players on a really play-to-play and drive-to-drive basis. And some of the older coaches like to stay in the booth. But it really feel like it's a coach preference. But honestly, if I'm thinking about it, I'm just thinking about the ease of being able to adjust on the fly. I feel like it's much easier to do that in the booth as an offensive coach. Whereas as a defensive coach, you definitely got to be, I feel like you kind of have to be on the field. Mm-hmm. You definitely have to be able to really kind of feel your players and get an idea of where they're at defensively. And I feel like that's best done on the field, even though there are some D coordinators that go in the booth. But I feel like for them, it's better on the field, and offense coordinators, it's just better in the booth because your game plan, you're trying to plan out passing concepts and seeing how defense is rotating, how they're playing certain formations, and you can't see it as well on the field. So yeah, but, I mean, I feel like it's just a kind of a preference thing, but I definitely feel like offensive coordinators should probably.
Finally, the hope of getting to see maybe even a small package of plays for the true freshman quarterback, Marco Lainez, that appears to be off the board. Brian mentioned today that Deacons won a lot of games for them, and because of that, he's going to make it a go throughout the whole part of the game. I think it's a missed opportunity, not only to see Marco Lainez in game action. This is an exhibition game. I know, Kirk, old school mentality. Bowl games are, you're still playing for them. They're still important. But in the grand scheme of things, I think it's more important for the future of this program to see, can Marco Lainez at minimum be the backup next year? Is he the guy that you're confident can be the guy behind Cade McNamara, a guy that's been sustained major injuries the last 2 years, his final season in Michigan, of course, this year with the Hawkeyes. And if not, shop around the portal a little bit, see if there is a quarterback, because unfortunately for Deacon Hill, we saw this year, there are just so many things accuracy wise that make it incredibly difficult for him to compete game in and game out at a high level. That's me, but looks like we're not going to get it, LeShun.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really anticipate, that type of package coming. I mean, yeah, it definitely would have been nice. And you're right. And in the grand scheme of things, yes, it is an exhibition game. It doesn't really matter whether if you win or lose it. Like, yeah, obviously it would be nice to have and an 11-win season, but overall doesn't really matter. But yeah, you do want to know kind of what the future of the program is, especially at the quarterback position, knowing how the Big Ten is moving, and how good those quarterbacks are on the west side of the country. Like, that you're going to have a strong quarterback room to be able to help put yourself in a position to really compete for championships. And now with the fact that the playoffs are going to 12 teams, right, it opens up that opportunity for Iowa. But if your quarterback room, isn't good enough to be able to, be a reason why you win football games, it's going to be really, really tough to compete for a championship. And the way that the quarterback room has been over the past few seasons, it hasn't been as we would have hoped, right? It's just been overall not the type of performances that we've been hoping for. And yeah, you want to know what the future of the program looks like and get an idea, because going into next year, you're assuming that you're not with Cade coming back, you're not going to have much more opportunities to get a look at the rest of your quarterback room and where those guys are at in live football. So yeah, it's tough. It's a little unfortunate that we're not going to be able to see kind of what we have, but I do understand it from Coach Ferentz's perspective of, hey, you want to go out there, it is a football game, it's an opportunity, we want to go ahead and we want to win. And because Deacon has been the one quarterbacking us through the entire season, I understand that, but also it's going to be tough to compete for championships if your quarterback can't go out there and complete passes on a consistent basis, both short, intermediate, and deep passes. And as of right now, Deacon hasn't shown that ability. Hopefully, maybe with more practice time throughout our bowl prep, right? He goes out on Monday and he goes out and shows us I have that. He has that capability, but as of right now, right, we haven't seen it.
LeShun, you ready to make some picks?
Yeah, let's get into it.
FanDuel, our picks here. We are tied after the initial bull surge, both 3-2 against the spread. In the first week of competition, we'll wrap it up. We will pick the Iowa-Tennessee game in the Citrus Bowl, both college football playoff games, and a couple more. We'll do that as we continue. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of going up against thousands of different players, pros, sharks, and a whole lot more, you just pick more or less of a 2 to 6 player stat projection, and you can watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks offers a reboot policy, so your entries stay in play even if one of your players get injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and doesn't return in the second, the player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Plus, quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports apps. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedon and make sure you use the code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Once again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for that first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Trent Condon, LeShun Daniels back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. It is time for our picks. LeShun, let's get into it here. We got 5 on the slate as we've done all season long. It was down to the wire for a regular season contest. You nipped me at the end. We go right back to the well again here. We got the Sun Bowl coming up this afternoon with Notre Dame, Oregon State. Coming up this evening, your father's alma mater, the Ohio State Buckeyes, now a big favorite against Missouri. What a weird point spread that one has been. 2 college football playoff games, Michigan favored by 1.5 against Alabama, Texas by 4 in the hook against Washington, and finally Iowa getting 6.5 against Tennessee. LeShun, the T-Box remains yours, and we open things up with the Sun Bowl. Notre Dame against Oregon State in El Paso. I don't think this is where the dreams of Notre Dame was before the season, yet there they are. You never got to experience the Sun Bowl. That was a big thing back in the 90s. Hayden Fry took a number of teams down there to the Sun Bowl. Knew some players on some of those teams. They told me quite the time down there. And certainly after the game, getting to go across the border, I saw some things. We'll just put it that way. Notre Dame, they're favored by 6.
Yeah, I like Notre Dame in this one. Even with the amount of people who aren't participating in the game, especially missing their All-American tackle. But that said, I mean, Oregon State, dealing with coaching and more players leaving. I just feel like they had a solid year, but with that mass exodus from their perspective, and knowing how well Notre Dame played throughout the year, even with some of their tougher games, I feel like that's some momentum that they're going to continue to build upon. And I think it's something that they're going to carry over through this game. So give me the Irish on this one.
Sam Hartman not going to be there. Starting running back Esteban, he's not going to be there. Their 3 starting wide receivers are all in the portal. This seems like a mess. And I know a lot of people have also talked about Oregon State, as DJ Uiagalelei will not be there as he's making way into the transfer portal. The backup Aiden Childs is already going to Michigan State. But their third-team quarterback, Ben Gulberson, he actually started the final 8 games a year ago. So there is starting experience there. Obviously, the importance of this game, Oregon State really playing for the final time as a major conference team. I think they're going to be there. And motivation, always big in a bowl game. We're going to be on the opposite sides here. I got the Beavers with my first pick. All right, we jump over to the Cotton Bowl tonight. Ohio State opened up as a favorite. Then Missouri, with all the opt-outs and the anticipated opt-outs, Missouri became the favorite. It got as high as a field goal. Now it is completely swung the other way. Ohio State is up at FanDuel right now as a 6-point favorite. This thing's been all over the place. Kind of my thoughts are all over the place. I guess because of the points, I'm going to grab the Tigers. I don't have a strong recommend here. I'm excited to see what Devin Brown is at the quarterback position for the Buckeyes. Ultimately, who is going to be playing in this game for Ohio State. But 6 just seems like too many for a Missouri team, again, with a lot of motivation.
Yeah, I mean, it really does seem like a lot of points. And for the most part, I feel like Ohio State, all the ranked opponents that they played this year, the games have been tight. And they've been tight all the way through throughout the end of the football game. And Missouri played some really good football this year. They took all the teams that they have been the lowest to, basically all the way down to the wire. And I like a lot of things they're doing, and they've got some really good football players over there. So give me the Tigers on this one. I definitely think that they're going to be able to keep it tight. I don't know why that line just happened to jump that far, but because of it, I'm going with the Tigers.
All right, let's get into the college football playoff games. Game 1, 4:00 Central Time. It's Alabama against Michigan. You get the first choice in this one, and I will tell you, now, first of all, I have a 40-1 ticket on Alabama. I bought that after they lost to Texas. So that's a reason for that, that I've kind of working on a way that I'm going to hedge and at least guarantee myself a profit here. Alabama getting 1.5 against Michigan.
Yeah, this one's going to be interesting. I'm actually really, really excited for this game. But there's something about Alabama, and there's something about them when they get to December and January football, where it's an entirely different football team. We saw it against Georgia in the SEC championship game, and Nick Saban and that Alabama team have done it year after year when it comes to late season football. And although Michigan they've been strong the entire football season, I don't know, there's just something about Alabama, and when it comes to playoff time and how that team responds and how they play, and because of that, I'm going with the Crimson Tide on this one.
Every narrative tells me to take Alabama. Nick Saban in games with this much time to prepare. Alabama, the way that they played against Georgia in the championship game. Michigan, with the loss of Zach Sinter, their outstanding guard, just how much they struggled against Iowa, moving the football consistently. All those things out there. But it feels like everybody is on Alabama. When everybody's on one side, I like to go the other. I'll take the Wolverines, and I'm going to lay the 1.5. We go to the second semifinal. It is the Sugar Bowl, 7:45 kickoff with the Longhorns and the Washington Huskies. two teams, a lot of fun to watch. We saw them a year ago play in a bowl game. Michael Penix, that's what it comes down to for me. Penix with this wide receiver group that is so incredibly talented. They can beat you in a myriad of different ways. The way that they run offensively, the tempo that they're going to play with. At Texas, it's been inconsistent this year. And people look at the end of the season, what they did against Okie State, Texas Tech, even Iowa State in the second half pulling away, but a lot of close calls in there against Houston. That game that was maybe a spot away from Houston winning that football game. Washington, they have just found ways to win, even games that they haven't played well. I'm going to grab the points at minimum here. Give me Washington plus the 4.5.
Yeah, we're going to be on the same side on this one. I like Washington a bunch. I mean, there's just something about that offense and how electric that they've been able to put up points basically at will against every single team that they've played. And even when their offense struggles, their offense still happens to be the thing that ends up winning them that football game by making plays down the stretch. And because of that, I firmly believe that Washington's going to be able to really keep this one tight throughout the entire game. And I just love them on offense. Their quarterbacks, the receivers, they're so explosive, and it's really fun watch. Watching Washington, and even though Texas is super strong up front on both sides of the football, I really do feel like because of how efficient that offense is and how well Penix does getting the ball to his weapons and how quickly he gets it out, it's something that really you think is going to be an advantage for the Huskies in this game. It's going to be something that's going to allow them to keep it real tight. So give me the Huskies.
Same side on that one. We wrap things up with Iowa against Tennessee. This one has evolved for me as well. Kind of changed my tune as this one's got closer and closer to the game. Iowa getting 6.5. What do you got, LeShun?
Yeah, I believe that I was going to be able to keep it close just based on the defense alone, and going against a young freshman quarterback is something that's going to be an advantage for the Hawkeyes, and the fact that Tennessee's been dealing with a lot of opt-outs and all those different things, as all teams are at this point in time in the year, but they didn't have quite the year that they were expecting, especially after having a strong season last year. And I think that they're probably feeling like we're ready to go to the next chapter and get to the next season. And because I know how Coach Ferentz goes about preparing for these bowl games and going about that, I feel like I was going to be able to keep this one tight. So give me the Hawks.
Right there with you. Iowa, I think, has an opportunity here. You start with looking at, obviously, the opt-outs. No opt-outs for Iowa. The injuries are still piling up, as we know, but the only guys in the portal, Deontay Vines and Spencer Petras, who wasn't even part of the team. On the other side, Tennessee will be without their starting defensive end, without their starting safety, without their top 4 cornerbacks, without 2 backup guards. Also, of course, Joe Milton not going to be there. Jalen Wright, their top running back, their number 2 running back, Jabari Small, not going to be there. A freshman quarterback going up against a Phil Parker defense. I think it all points to Iowa, and maybe even a little taste here on the money line for me, but definitely grabbing the 6.5. I'm jumping aboard here. Iowa needs to obviously keep it at their tempo. Not going to be able to get in a shootout here, I don't think, and win this football game, but make a couple of plays offensively, get a big run, Deacon complete a pass or 2 down the field, and then that defense do their thing. I got Iowa covering, and like I said, just a little smidge on the money line here, and we'll throw that out there. Those are our picks presented by FanDuel. FanDuel, the spot for you as you're looking to bet on the bowl games, NFL Week 17, and a whole lot more at FanDuel. LeShun, enjoy the bowl game, and before you know it, offseason will be here. We'll have a national championship game to talk about, but great time of year, bowl game on Monday. We'll talk to you again next week.
Sounds good. Go Hawks.